Welcome, welcome, everyone. I think everybody is tumbling into the room, as it were. So welcome. We are delighted that you are here. It may be a good evening to you. It may be a good morning to you. It may be a good afternoon. But whatever time zone you are joining us from around the world, we are so glad that you are here. In case you're wondering if you are in the right place, if you are here for the information session for the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program at the University of Pennsylvania, you have indeed found the right place, and we're delighted to welcome you here. My name is Leona Brandwene, and I serve as the Associate Director of Education for the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program and at the Positive Psychology Center. And I am joined by some wonderful colleagues who I would like for you to get to know as well. So I'm going to turn things over next to my colleague, Laura.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura Taylor. I'm the project manager of education at the Positive Psychology Center, and I'm also a former alum and assistant instructor in the program. Erin?
Hello, thanks for being here, everybody. I'm Aaron Buchkowski, the manager of education at the Positive Psychology Center. I've been with MAPP for going on 18 years this month. So I'm happy to answer your questions, and I hope you learn a lot out of this session. I'll kick it over to Jaden.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jaden Guybeson. I am the administrative coordinator for the MAPP program. I'm a little less than Erin. I just hit my 2 years, but I love the MAPP team, and I'm hopefully this will be helpful. And along with Erin, I'll be here to answer any questions you guys have. And Akila.
Hi everyone, my name is Akila Abdulrahman. I'm a recruitment specialist for the College of Liberal and Professional Studies, and I work with prospective students to the MAPP program. So I'll be helping to answer your questions tonight.
Excellent. So, welcome. As you can see, we are well resourced to be able to serve you here this evening or this afternoon, depending upon where you are. And I'm mindful that we have some folks who are dialing in from around the world. So we're a little curious as to where you might be hailing from. So if you can see in the bottom of your toolbar, there is a chat there, and we would ask you, would you mind putting in the city and state, city and province, country that you are hailing from? We would love to know who is joining us here today. Lovely. Oh my goodness. Love to see all of these different places popping up here. Lots of folks from the US and spreading across the US from as close as Philadelphia, King of Prussia, all the way over to San Francisco and LA, or San Diego and LA, San Diego, San Francisco, and LA. We've got lots of Californians in the room. So welcome, everyone. We are delighted that you're here. And I also see somebody who's dialing in from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which actually happens to be where I'm dialing in from in my home office. So we're glad to see you all. So as we prepare for tonight, a little bit of housekeeping might help us. Now, you just used the chat function, right? And that's going to be how we'll interact with one another when it comes to information that we're asking from you. We might ask you, oh, I don't know, we may have a couple of quizzes that are set up for you today, and a few other fun activities. But if you have questions, we're going to ask you to use the question feature, which you should also see in your toolbar. Now, our MAPP classroom is quite collaborative, and so we want to make sure that we are already role modeling what it means to be a loving learning community. So using that Q&A feature, we recognize there's lots of people in the room, and Erin and Jaden are going to be working very hard to answer those questions in real time. So if your question is going to be answered during the presentation, we may not answer your question in the Q&A. And sometimes our questions may be a little bit short because there's a lot that we're going to be fielding. But on the flip side, if you see somebody that has asked a question that you too are interested in, we encourage you to upvote that question so that we can get a little bit of an idea around how many people are interested in or energized by certain questions. All right, with no further ado, I think we're going to go ahead and jump in. And this is the agenda that we're going to cover today. So we'll spend some time talking about positive psychology. I know you're all here to learn about the program, so we'll spend some time learning about the program and the faculty. And that really is, when we think about the MAPP community, quite inclusive. So it's not just the faculty, but it's also the students and the alumni as well. So we'll talk to you about the community in its entirety. Then we'll transition and spend a little bit of time on admissions, because that, of course, is a prerequisite for you to be a part of this community. And then we'll spend some extra time at the end on questions, if that feels okay. All right, if we're ready to dive in, it's time for a little bit of an overview of positive psychology, which I would imagine that some of you are familiar with, but you may not know the origins of. So we'll spend a little bit of time there. Okay, I would imagine that most of you see this face and it looks a little bit familiar to you. And that's because this is Martin Seligman, or Marty, as he's known around the PPC. Marty, of course, is the founder of the field of positive psychology, or at least one of the founders. So back in 1998, Marty was elected to be the president of the American Psychological Association. And at that time, Marty's platform was his position was stating that he felt that psychology had begun to lose its way. There was a lot that psychology had accomplished in the last 40 years, particularly related to pathology. But Marty recognized as a clinical psychologist himself that he would have a client or a patient who would come in who might be depressed or have an anxiety disorder. And he said, once I was able to remediate their depression or their anxiety, I found myself and they found themselves feeling a little bit empty, like there was not something else. And so through a lot of these experiences, he began to hypothesize that there is more to life, of course, than getting rid of the things that are in the way of our flourishing, but there are things that we can add, and those two things are not the same. So with his colleague, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, he authored a seminal article in American Psychologist that proposed the field of positive psychology, suggesting that psychology, in addition to studying and remediating pathologies, should also focus on three things: positive states, like the positive emotions that we feel, joy, gratitude, amusement; positive traits, those enduring characteristics that we take from situation to situation, like our character strengths, such as fairness or leadership or a sense of gratitude. And then finally, that we should also study positive institutions. And those are the institutions that create the conditions that enable people to thrive. So it was the traits, it was the experiences, and the institutions that Marty and Mihai really focused on, and especially Marty when he gave that opening address at the APA in 1998. So what happened after that? Well, a lot happened after that. Marty's call really galvanized the field quite a bit. So the first degree program in positive psychology was born in 2005. That's us. That's why you're here. We're really excited to say that we just celebrated 20 years, and we'll share a little bit about that celebration, which we just had a couple of weekends ago in a few minutes. But in addition to that, there was this real galvanizing around funders, which had been focusing their funding streams solely towards pathology to kind of expand the lens, so to speak, or the aperture. And so hundreds of researchers around the world began to look at the positive side of life. And so there were international conferences that started to be hosted. There was a burgeoning literature that came together under this umbrella of positive psychology. Many applications, especially professional applications in a variety of different fields, began to burgeon, right? You can see a handful of them there listed on the slide, with education and business, coaching, medicine, right? There are other things that are not even listed there. Sport, in addition to that, social services, etc. There are many, many different areas that positive psychology has been applied. And then, of course, the birth of the International Positive Psychology Association back in 2007, which was actually founded by one of our founding directors. So Marty also at that time started the Positive Psychology Center. That's where we're located here at the University of Pennsylvania. And the Positive Psychology Center has three different pillars in it. There is, in the center, you'll see in red, the research, which of course is the foundational element that underpins the entire field, right? We need research and solid understanding of the different flourishing of human flourishing in order to be able to make good decisions and design what's on the left-hand side, excellent applications that we know will help support people's flourishing. And then over on the right-hand side, you'll see education. So let's unpack these just a little bit further. So I had mentioned research, right? That is the center. And we are very proud here at Penn to say that we've actually birthed quite a bit of research in the field of positive psychology. There are more research projects than we can list on this slide. Otherwise, it would look quite busy, but we cherry picked a few of them for you. And those include the World Wellbeing Project that was actually founded by a MAPP alum as he was doing his PhD under Marty. And that looks at big data, right? And when we say big data, all the information that people are providing and sharing with the world on social media, et cetera, and how we can use that to understand flourishing at scale, right? Across communities, thinking about from census tracts to zip codes to entire nations. We can really leverage big data, which is quite a different and a very innovative way to approach psychological research. The Primals Project, which has been headed up by another MAPP alum who also got his PhD under Marty, which looks at how the lenses that we take on the world, such as is the world a safe place? Is the world an enticing place? Then have trickle-down effects for our flourishing and for the decisions that we make moment to moment. In addition, our Humanities Project, Humanities and Human Flourishing, was founded by our founding director, who I'm going to speak about in just a little bit. Positive Sexuality, which is a new grant just kicked off last year, which we're very excited about here at the center. And then also some of the work in Transcendence, which was also kicked off by a MAPP alum. So all of that research, right, that came out of Penn and out of the Positive Psychology Center at Penn was the core, but then there was also the application. So you'll see that on the application side, our colleagues Karen Rivich and Judy Salzberg are the leaders of the Penn Resiliency Program, which is arguably one of the most researched applications of positive psychology in the world. It's been applied in education, in medicine, in the Department of Justice, in the military, in professional sports teams, etc. So it's actually quite significant. On the right-hand side, however, you see a lot of what Marty was most interested in his mission around education. And so we have three different educational offerings that we have here at Penn and at the Positive Psychology Center, including our Coursera courses, our massive online open courses, or MOOCs, our APOP courses, but importantly for all of you who are here tonight, we're going to talk about MAPP. So Marty decided that it was important that the field of positive psychology have the equivalent of what the natural sciences would call engineers. People who are thinking about how to apply this out in the world, and we're thinking about how to test it across a variety of different contexts and populations. And he felt that a master's degree was the right way to do that. So when Marty decided that he was going to support the growth of ethical scholarly practitioners that would support human flourishing across a variety of contexts, he realized that he needed some help. And so he turned at that time to our founding director, James Pawelski, who came to us from Vanderbilt University. James is a professor of practice and the director of education here at the Positive Psychology Center. He's also the founder of the Humanities and Human Flourishing Project here at Penn, as well as an adjunct professor of religious studies. So James came from Vanderbilt. In addition to all of those roles that I just listed for him here at the Positive Psychology Center, he was also the founding executive director of the International Positive Psychology Association. So James came to Penn in 2005, and the mission that he and Marty agreed on would be how they would build a world-class educational experience that would be unparalleled around the world, and that would teach people the foundations and science of human flourishing so that they could then take it out and apply it. So they started putting together this thing called this master's program, a one-year hybrid master's program oriented towards mid-year professionals who might be interested in how they would apply this within their own context. They got started, they started putting it together, very innovative thinking, and the administrators at Penn said, this looks fantastic. And for a master's program that's brand new in a brand new field, keep your expectations low. You would probably expect to have a great turnout if you had 10 or 12 people join your program that year. So this was our first class, which was a little bit more than 10 to 12 people that you can see here. And so that interest really demonstrates how much humans turn toward the idea of flourishing and how important it is for us to think about the science and begin to spread it out further. So, maybe 1 year was a one-off, but, after that, class after class and year after year, in 2015, we actually celebrated 10 years of the MAPP program, and this was a group of alumni that came together for our annual summit. We were delighted to welcome them. We've welcomed our most recent 20th class of MAPP, so this was the group of individuals who have the honor of being MAPP 20 and graduated in 2025. And then more recently, we actually celebrated our 20th anniversary just a couple of weekends ago. It was a delight. We had almost 300 people there. Nearly 30% of our alumni came back to celebrate with us, and we spent that time in community, intellectual stimulation, hearing from outstanding speakers, working together both to reflect back on some of the work that we've done together and what's been accomplished, but also to look forward, right? And think about the future of positive psychology and where things might go from here. So that gives you a little bit of an idea around the background of the MAPP program. And now I know you're here to hear about the MAPP educational design. So I'm delighted that Laura Taylor is here to help you out with that. So Laura, please take it away.
Thanks so much, Leona. So I want to start just by reminding you that MAPP is a world-class program, first in the world to be a Master's of Applied Positive Psychology, and we offer extensive academic preparation. It's within 1 year of study. So we start every fall, and those same students will graduate at the end of the summer and will move on to the next class. So 1 full calendar year that way. It's a professional master's degree, and it's intended to provide you with this extensive academic preparation so that we can look at those theories and empirical foundations of positive psychology as we consider really deeply the ethical application. As a professional master's degree, you're going to think about that application to enable you as a scholarly practitioner in the areas in which you are already expert, right? So that is something that is really exciting because it enables positive psychology to be applied in many, many domains across the classroom. By and large, our students and alumni do work with non-clinical populations. Therefore, there is no licensure or credentialing as populations are by and large non-clinical. Our intention is that students will be applying and helping individuals to flourish and organizations to flourish, not just in a psychological context, but in any context where you find a human being. Specifically, I want to highlight that MAPP is actually not a research master's. We have a lot of research, we use a lot of research, we cite a lot of research, but only a small percentage of our students elect to research with their capstone projects and intend to go on to be researchers and PhDs. Most of our students are really interested in that application or scholarly practitioner work so they can think about how positive psychology will be put into the world, and as such the final project of the capstone will be focused on their area of application. It's structured as a hybrid model, which includes a combination of both synchronous on-site classes and asynchronous distance learning between classes and on-sites. To clarify, when we say on-site, we mean synchronous learning. It could be on campus, or it could be in the virtual classroom. We value connections, and so we're going to continue in this hybrid design for the 2026-2027 academic year, which you would potentially be applying for. Synchronous on-sites alternate formats, so they can be held both on Philadelphia campus, in person, and virtual campus on Zoom. Our distance learning periods will continue between all of these on-sites, and we will have a virtual platform that supports you in that asynchronous work. So let's look at the schedule, Leona. Next fall, we have, you'll see, September 2nd to 6th. That's a little bit longer because it's immersion week. It's your first moment in the MAPP program. You'll notice that's a Wednesday to a Sunday. It's on campus. Then you'll have the virtual on-site in October and come back to campus for on-site 3 later in October when you get to meet some fun alumni, like some of those pictures. And the November on-site will be virtually again on Zoom, and you'll come back to campus to re-anchor in the December on-site. But remember, those on-sites are not the only work in MAPP. There's also that distance learning period. So you are in full-time study for the calendar year, by on-site, synchronous, or at a distance, asynchronous, working with your own schedule. That same thing is going to be true in the spring. So if you don't mind showing, yes, spring dates also on our website. Voila, also distance learning. Same exact cadence. All right, so as we look at that, you're also going to be able to find those on the website by going to courses and curriculum in the left-hand toolbar, hitting that little plus sign to choose program format and schedule. That way, if you need those dates in another way, you can pop them into your calendar and already start planning, even as an applicant. Next to each onsite, you're going to notice that location, which is important. All right, so let's move on to a little bit more about what this hybrid format looks like. You are going to be able to continue to work full time. That is an intentional design of the MAPP program, which enables us to have a great advantage because we don't have to stop life, work, or family commitments. You will have a strong commitment in MAPP. It permits people to continue to work full time, as in like 40 hours a week, not as in 80 hours a week, depending on your particular work lives. So be sure you're managing that expectation. That's what that little asterisk is about. Our MAPP students are typically spending between 20 and 25 hours a week on their work. Now, this can vary slightly depending on reading and writing speed of individuals. So you might want to factor that in for yourself a little bit. And students who typically join MAPP will remain domiciled in their community of residence and continue to work full-time while they pursue full-time study. That's the intentional design. The hybrid design also enables a really diverse cohort of students from across the globe to participate, which is something we love. And that enriches our classroom experience and diverse professional and geographical backgrounds as we consider ethical application of positive psychology. It also enhances the educational experience with rich discussion and a variety of perspectives from our students and our faculty as well. Now, one of the things that we also think is really important about that diverse community, and that is essentially unique to this MAPP program at the University of Pennsylvania, is that there is a lifelong alumni community. You're a MAPster for a year as a student, but then you get to be a MAPster for life as an alum, which is a really exciting thing here at the University of Pennsylvania and a unique differentiator from our program to others, including the mappalumni.org is the website where you can find things like a directory of our alumni, which are now over 800, to see what they're doing with their degrees, how they're applying it in different domains, etc. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. Now, internal faculty, we are lucky enough to have a really strong standing faculty in positive psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. Of course, you've already been introduced to Martin Seligman. You may recognize Angela Duckworth or Allison Mackey, who is our neuroscience specialist. We have, of course, James Pawelski, who you saw earlier, Claire Robinson Kraft, who is research and statistics and evaluation so that you can be an ethical consumer of that research. And of course, Judy and Karen were both mentioned in their resilience projects, who will be teaching a course in the MAPP program, and Jared Clifton, our own PhD, who is former MAPP alum, now PhD as well, who is doing the primals work at Penn. So lots of great resources here, but also the advantage of having this hybrid format is that we can invite guests from all over. We're lucky enough to be able to collaborate with a number of different psychologists in the field of positive psychology. You're going to notice here people like Barry Schwartz on cognitive bias and decision making, Jane Dutton and John Paul Stevens on high quality connections and application in organizations, Jacqueline Mattis, who specializes in identity and well-being, Shige Oishi, who's a psychologically rich life and the research around that. We have David Cooperrider in the little hat in the second row, who's looking at appreciative inquiry. We have Barbara Fredrickson in positive emotions. They're in the yellow jacket. We have both Jonathan Haidt and Paul Bloom, who come in from a moral psychology perspective. Jane Gillum, who works in positive education and has done extensive research there. John Rady, who's looking at physical health and well-being. Michael Boehm, who is looking at mindfulness and meditation and how that influences our well-being. And of course, Amy Wisniewski, who's on job crafting within expanding your skills in an organizational context. There's a lot to cover and a lot of exciting things to think about. What that looks like from a course and curriculum perspective is that we are offering this cutting edge, but both grounded history and context so that you are able to have a foundational education in positive psychology. Some of those classes this year have looked like this. We have had Dr. Seligman's class, Marty, still teaching in the MAPP program, which is such a joy for us to get to learn alongside the founder. He's bringing guest speakers like Barbara Fredrickson, Ed LeMay, Richard Lucas, Lyle Unger, and that course is going to be experiencing a new title change, an update to ensure that it accurately reflects the level of information that Marty is giving you. So our tentative placeholder for that is the history and future of positive psychology, not just an introduction to positive psychology, but really helping you hear that it's quite special to hear both the history and the cutting edge of the field from the field's founding visionary, which is really exciting. Our team researches and refines and updates our curriculum over time to ensure we are in alignment with a growing field. So you're going to notice that all of these classes may have some slight changes in the coming years, but we are guaranteeing that foundational education. Research methods and evaluation is by our own Claire Robertson Craft. She will make it fun for you. If you are someone who is scared of research, do not be worried. She will ease those fears and help you go along the way. Foundations of Positive Interventions is a deep philosophical dive with our own James Pawelski to ensure that we're really thinking critically about what is positive, for whom, when, etc. Perspectives of well-being with our own Leona Brandwene here on this call is something that is a wonderful place for us to expand beyond just the PERMA model of well-being and think about all the other aspects of well-being that come into play. We have a lot of guest speakers, some of which we mentioned in the last slide. And we had welcomed Cassie Holmes this year as well. All right, keep going, Leona, you're right. In the spring, there are 4 more classes. So 4 in the fall and 4 in the spring. In the spring, you have Applying Positive Interventions in Institutions, again, with your own Leona Brandwene. It has a wonderful array of guest speakers and the Service Learning Project, where you really get to get your feet wet in the application of positive psychology and learn what it looks like to go through that process of design alongside an organization, which is so cool. Positive Psychology in Individuals with Judy Salzberg-Levick, who is bringing in additional speakers on character strengths, performance psychology, and spirituality and transcendence. We have Psychology in the Neuroscience of Character with Allison Mackey, who's really looking at what that looks like, how to make these things stick across the developmental lifespan of their neuroscience. And we've got the Humanities and Human Flourishing course for our own James Pawelski, who is running the Positive Humanities, the grant that he has for our other team as well. That field has grown so much in the last few years, and it's a delight to see evolution as it continues to impact well-being for so many. So you can have those questions about, what does music mean to my well-being? What about art? What are the humanities, philosophy, ethics, etc., that might be impacting my day-to-day? All right, and then as a culminating project, you get the joy of finding what it is you want to ask and the question that galvanizes you for positive application of this work and advancing that through a capstone project. It's an independent project over the summer semester. It looks like one course. Don't be fooled. It is a full-time study for a shorter amount of time. So you have 4 courses in the fall, 4 in the spring, and your capstone course over the summer, which is still full-time study. So plan that similar amount of time as you do that. Okay. There's been a lot of information coming at you, so I want to do a quick temperature check and see what's landing and what's not. If you could open your chat, we are going to ask a pop quiz. Dun, dun, dun. Which of these are true? The University of Pennsylvania MAPP program was the first of its kind. The founder of Positive Psychology, Martin Seligman, still teaches a course in MAPP. One strength of the MAPP program is the diversity of its faculty, both A and C, or all of the above. What do you guys think? Not to be fooled, strong answers.
We have some scholars here, Laura. I see. They have been paying attention.
They have been paying attention. Wonderful. Okay, next one.
They would be right. Yes. Okay, moving on.
Which of these are true? The term on-site means synchronous learning. On-site formats will alternate between our Philadelphia campus for on-sites 1, 3, and 5, and our virtual campus for on-sites 2 and 4. I can attend these on-sites however I want. Or of these 10 on-sites, 6 are in person and 4 are virtual, or E, which is A, B, and D. What do you guys think? Again,
Nobody's getting fooled here, Laura.
nobody's getting fooled. So that is an important highlight I want to just really drive home, is that you do need to attend the sessions in their designed format. You don't attend in-person sessions virtually, and you don't attend virtual sessions in person. We will alternate formats collectively for that synchronous communication. All right, awesome. Last one. Are you guys ready? Which of these are true? Most students continue to work full-time while attending MAPP. You can expect to spend approximately 25 hours a week on your work in MAPP. MAPP prepares students to apply positive psychology within their domain of expertise, A and C, or all of the above. Man, there's no fooling. I thought at some point you guys would give up on E, but you're really too smart for that. All right, well, wonderful. Thank you for checking in on some of those touch bases to be sure that we are getting that to you. And I'd love to turn it back over to Leona.
Terrific. Okay, so we are going to spend some time talking about students. So I had mentioned that one of the real uniquenesses, and Laura had reinforced this, is the sense of community in MAPP. And that means that we bring together people who are learning. It's not a one-way learning direction between our faculty and our students. There's a lot of lateral learning that occurs in our classroom, and a lot of engagement with our faculty. So speaking about the students and understanding what their experience is like is really important. So I would love for you to, as you take a look at this photo, just take a look at the expressions that you see on people's faces. Some of them are quite serious. Some of them are quite joyful. Some of them are really deeply engaged, right? It looks like they are engaged in some serious intellectual inquiry. And all of those things would be true because each of these experiences is reflected in our MAPP classroom. So when our students come to the table, there is not only a deep sense of curiosity about the science of human flourishing and about the work we're engaging in together, there's also a deep sense of shared mission. Because while each student comes to the table with a different vision for applying positive psychology, there is this shared sense of mission between our students and between our faculty that we are changing the world in some way, right? That we're really making a difference in the world. And so bringing together people from all walks of life, right? And I'm going to talk about some of the diversities that we see in our classroom is a really meaningful way to increase the quality of the educational experience for everyone. Interaction is absolutely foundational, and a community that is invested in one another's learning is also foundational to the MAPP experience. So let's break that down into a few numbers, right? So we can talk a little bit about what that diversity means in terms of our student demographics. So let's start with age. The youngest person that has ever come to MAPP was 21 years old, right out of undergraduate, while the oldest person that ever matriculated in MAPP was 70. Our average is around mid-30s, right? So it's typically a mid-career professional that comes into our classroom because they already have an area where they've been working in the world. They can see the benefits of applying the science of human flourishing in that area, and are coming here because they are curious and want to build that expertise so that they can support that flourishing in their area of the world. In addition to some of that large range in terms of age, we also have a variety in terms of geography. So I believe that we have welcomed somebody from every single state in the United States, as I'm thinking about that off the top of my head. You know, some of the ones that you might think, well, maybe, maybe not, Alaska or Hawaii, but yes, actually, we've had people from each of those states that have joined us. In addition to that, we have welcomed people from well over 35 countries around the world. So you can see some of the countries that are listed here, and perhaps you see a country that is that reflects where you're from. Perhaps you do not, in which case you may be the person to add to our list by coming to us and bringing another perspective into our classroom. We're very delighted that this year we actually have 2 people from Nigeria that have joined us in our classroom, and they've been an absolute delight in helping us think through what well-being means from a different perspective. So we've talked about age, we've talked about geography. Now I'll also talk about professional diversity. So in our classroom, we do bring individuals from all walks of life who are having interactions with humans in different domains. So we have had physicians, including surgeons, psychiatrists, and other specialties that have joined us. You can see this list that we have here in terms of health. physical therapists we've had come into our classroom. Last year, we had a pediatric dentist that joined us in our classroom. We've had physician's assistants and registered dietitians. So each of them, you can imagine, brings a very different perspective, but also think about how the interaction in that context or environment between, for instance, a dentist and a young child who they're serving in that moment changes, right? When it's less about the transactional experience of just getting a cleaning done, even though that's very important, but also thinking about how that child can, how this is contributing to that child's flourishing and how you can create positive experiences for them. Education, of course, is another area. Not only do we try and walk the talk of positive education within our classroom, but we welcome a variety of different professionals that are supporting education in very different contexts, all the way from the really littles, right? People who are in kindergarten or even before kindergarten, all the way through people that are working in higher education. We welcome people from the business world, and that is when we say the business world, right, that's a huge and messy bucket, right? So there's a couple of categories that you see listed out here, which ranges from anything from people who are at the executive level to people who are in aspects of business that you would probably traditionally associate with positive psychology, like human resources. But in addition to that, coaches and consultants, entrepreneurs, we've even had some venture capitalists that have been a part of our community, again, all with a shared kind of, it's like the great rhizome underneath us all, right? The shared perspective on how do we increase human flourishing in the world. In the field of law, lawyers famously are not flourishing, and so we have welcomed a number of attorneys into our classroom who are very interested in how to ensure that both the practice of law as well as legal education is a positive experience and that those individuals can flourish. And finally, a big, I had called it the business world a messy bucket. This is an even messier bucket, I think, because it's got such a variety of different professions in here, from religious and spiritual leaders, right? We've had individuals who are rabbis or are in some other spiritual leadership role. Social workers and nonprofit leaders have been a part of our experience. We've had people who are engineers, computer scientists, military personnel, people who are leading and creating a better performance amongst professional athletes in sports. In addition to all of those different domains, we also do welcome some individuals into our classroom who are more recent graduates. Usually about 25% of our classroom falls into that category. And really what distinguishes those new grads that are coming to us is they've got a vision, right? They really have an idea around how they want to improve the flourishing and the health and well-being of people in the world. And we have some absolutely stellar new grads that are a part of our class this year. Okay, so this is a little bit about what you might think about in terms of how our classroom looks. You'll notice that there are people who are smiling, people who are excited about the work they're doing, people that are focused very clearly, and there's also celebrations too, right? Because we really do want to make sure that we're walking our talk and that we are actually enjoying our time together, whether that be the time that we spend in person or the time that we spend online. This is actually an image of our beloved MAPP 16. They graduated in 2021. They had adopted a team uniform that was orange crush shirts because they had decided that they were the oranges, and they like to surprise us and have a lot of play in our classroom in our virtual environment, which was delightful. Within your MAPP classroom, should you come to MAPP, I also wanted to share with you that there is, you'll be working not only with a larger classroom, right, of individuals, but also we have small working groups or cohorts. And those cohorts are sometimes working on projects together where there's a deliverable, right, or an assignment that they have to do together. But it also provides a nice anchor during those distance learning periods. I'll say you never really feel alone at MAPP, right? Even though you're working on some individual assignments, there is always somebody that is working in lockstep with you, whether that be your small group or a variety of the other experiences that we offer during those distance learning periods in order to ensure that people can remain connected to one another. So we welcome people from all different walks of life who are, again, sharing that mission of wanting to improve well-being in their particular domain and corner of the world. Okay, before I turn to alumni, let me just take a pause there in case there are any questions that are time sensitive that we would wish to answer on the fly. Jaden and Aaron, give me a either a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you feel like we should keep rolling.
Yeah, I think we could keep going and save. We have a couple of good questions in the Q&A, but we could save them.
Excellent. Okay, that sounds good. All right, then we will continue to roll. And let's talk about our alumni. They're very top of mind for us because they were just with us this past weekend and we were excited to welcome them. So, what can you do with a MAPP degree, right? Already we've talked to you about the variety of different domains that have been represented. I actually want in this photo to highlight the experiences of two of our MAPP grads. And specifically, I'd like to talk about Chad Thomas. Chad is an executive working with a company called BetterUp. BetterUp is a science-based application of positive psychology that applies through coaching support for professionals in a business to in kind of a B2B design. They have done extraordinary work in ensuring that they are both measuring the work that they're doing and have also worked very hard to make sure that Mapsters are heavily involved. So we've got quite a few people that work at that organization. But again, Alexi Robichaud, who's the founder of that organization, was very mission driven around helping people to flourish and helping to support organizations as being kind of an anchor point where so many people spend their time to be able to support them in flourishing. So Chad is one example of an alum who's applying this work out in the real world. A second person I'd point out is right here next to Marty, is Julia Poole. Julia came to us. She had been a teacher of the year in the DC public school system, and she was very concerned about burnout amongst teachers because the average time to burnout for very highly skilled teachers, especially in some of our most under-resourced schools, was about 5 years, right? So that's a huge institutional loss to have somebody who has accrued 5 years of experience, teaching experience, etc., to then decide to leave the organization because they feel psychologically burned out. So Julia and one of her classmates did a capstone where they did a qualitative study learning about the exemplary teachers who made it past 5 years and what distinguished them. And they were able to identify the psychological traits of teachers who persist and are able to remain in their classrooms. They've taken that and they've looked at those skills, and now they're taking those skills and teaching them to other high-performing teachers in school districts all across the United States in order to help teachers to, again, persist in those classrooms. It helps to make sure that there's not a talent drain in the field of education, but also helps those teachers flourish. And when those teachers flourish, then certainly their students do too. So those are just two different examples of applications of positive psychology amongst our alumni. I'll also say our MAPP alumni, we are so proud, are leading the way in so many ways. We were just at the International Positive Psychology Association in Brisbane, Australia. Our alumni were all over the agenda. There was so much work that was being presented by our alumni of how they are changing the world in their own domains and in a variety of different ways. Our alumni also were founders and founding staff members within so many of these organizations. So we had an alum who was the founding executive director of the International Positive Education Network. And we have an alumna that actually sits on the board of that group and other MAPP alumni that are contributing to that. The Positive Education Schools Association, or PISA in Australia, is also chaired by an alumna of the MAPP program. The Canadian Positive Psychology Association was founded by MAPP alumna who continue to advance the mission of that organization. The Chinese Positive Psychology Association was founded by MAPP alum, as well as the Colombian, the Japan Positive Psychology Association. And then, of course, we've had so many alumni who have been involved in the International Positive Psychology Association, which is the umbrella organization that oversees it all. And in fact, their current executive director, Andrew Soren, is a MAPP alum as well. So we're super proud that our MAPP alumni are really leading the way and serving in leadership roles that help to sustain the field and to ensure it's at its highest levels of performance. Our masters, as you know, also produce capstones, and we're able to modestly, right, be able to track how those capstones have been distributed around the world. So this is just a little bit of a map where you can see where some of the downloads have come from prior years for capstones. So you'll see that when our mapsters create scholarship, right, and make this scholarly contribution through their capstone, it's not just something that gathers dust on the shelf. There are people around the world who are also interested in the work that they're doing. And that work goes into a public-facing website at Penn called Scholarly Commons, optionally, where our alumni can share their information, and then it's accessed by people around the world. So the goal here, again, is to make a difference and to ensure that we are distributing that information at scale so that others can flourish too. I'll also just mention that our alumni and students just came together, as I mentioned, during the summit. So they're also sharing that information with each other as a way of helping to continue to elevate our educational experience, not only between and amongst themselves, but in their interaction with students who come into the classroom. So we're really extraordinarily proud, not only of that, but of how many of our alumni then go on and pursue higher education because they, again, continue to contribute to the scholarship in positive psychology. Okay, so we are finally at a place where we're going to talk about something that might be very meaningful to you, and that is the admissions process. So I would like to welcome my colleague, Erin, to speak to you about some of the nuts and bolts around admissions. Erin?
Sure. Thanks, Leona. So yes, you can see listed here, and these are also on our website, everything you will need to submit your application. So I'll just go over this quickly. We'll need your resume, an essay. Those questions are on our website. And we have a word limit now instead of a page limit. I'm not on the website. I think it's 1,500 words. Is that right?
I'll triple check and put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you. 3 letters of recommendation. So a popular question we get is who are good sources for recommendations? It's really going to depend on your particular circumstances, but just some general rules of thumb would be the more professional relationship, the better. A letter from somebody who's above you in your organization is better than somebody who reports to you. And other than that, you don't need an academic reference. That could make sense for you if you're a recent graduate, but a lot of our applicants have been out of school for a while, so that might not be the best source of a recommendation, and it's not required to have an academic reference. We'll need all of your transcripts. So that's from undergrad. If you did transfer courses, we'll want to see all those transcripts. At the time you submit your application, you can use unofficial transcripts. If you're admitted, eventually you'll need to request official transcripts, but for the purposes of getting your application submitted, you can use unofficial transcripts. So if you have copies around, those would be fine. Importantly, for any international applicants, transcripts from schools outside of the United States have to be evaluated by World Education Services, and we'd like to see the course-by-course evaluation. Depending on where you went to school, that can take some time to even get your transcript. So if you're definitely applying, I would get that process started soon. The GRE is not required for everyone. So for this year, it will be just if your bachelor's was earned later than spring of 2023. And then the TOEFL or IELTS is required of everyone who has a native language other than English. So again, all this is on our website, and the application deadline is March 1st. You can start an application and save it and go back and add these things in at any time. So whenever you're ready to start, you can, and then admissions decisions will be released by the end of June of 2026. So this is important. We do not review applications unless they're complete. We do some outreach, but it's really will behoove you to make sure you're checking your application and that every check box is completed. And when your application is complete, you will get an email. So if you haven't gotten that email, or if you log in and you're missing something, you'll want to stay on top of that and make sure that you get everything in. And again, so only completed applications will be considered. So we do have one scholarship offered by Penn, the Christopher Peterson Memorial Fellowship, that covers approximately half of the tuition. If you happen to be from Hong Kong and work in positive education, the Bei Shan Tang Foundation out of Hong Kong offers a scholarship that covers the full tuition. And again, you can find the details for these on our website. And those applications are integrated into the MAPP application now. So you can just do that in line with submitting your application to MAPP. A lot of other people want to know, how people cover their tuition, and it really looks different for every person. Some people get employer assistance through benefits. Somebody asked in the chat about veterans benefits. We've had Fulbright and Rotary scholars. A lot of people have found, a lot of times mission-driven organizations are looking to help certain types of people continue their education. So the issue is there's not a great way of finding those, but if you put in some legwork on Google, you might uncover something that fits your particular situation. For federal loans, that's a bit of a shifting landscape right now. So I don't want to give too much information because I'm not sure how things will end up. But I will say, if you're going to apply for federal loans, you can start your FAFSA as soon as possible. And then also, Penn has an Office of Student Registration and Financial Services that can help you navigate some of those issues.
All right, Erin, thank you so much for that overview. That was super helpful. And now we come to the place in our agenda for questions. Before we turn over to those questions, there's just one more thing I'd love to say as we're wrapping this portion of our agenda and the overview of our program. MAPP is a special place. I don't know of any other graduate program in the world that is able to get 30% of their alumni who come back to them on, this year was a 20th anniversary, but every year we're getting over 20% of our alumni that come back to us and join us for our MAPP Summit each year. That means that the learning continues, but the community continues as well. Our alumni stay in touch with us on a regular basis, and it really does create that giant sense of community together. As Laura said, you may be a student for a year at MAPP, but you are a MAPster for life, and they really do put the legwork behind that to ensure that our alumni are getting supported in any way that they can in order to advance their own flourishing and the flourishing of others in their community. MAPP is special, and I think part of the reason, as I reflect on why people come back to the MAPP community in that way, is because of that shared sense of mission. We are very upfront with one another about what's our why for coming to MAPP. Why do we want to be here, and what are we hoping to accomplish in the world? That has tremendous bonding energy, both between our students who are in the classroom, but also the faculty that are working with them. So it does create a very special energy, a very shared energy with that shared sense of mission. And so perhaps if you have that sense of mission as well, where you're thinking about how the science of flourishing can help to improve whatever corner of the world you are interested in, then perhaps we should see your application this year. All right, so let's take a pause there and let us open up for some questions. I'm going to reach out to my colleagues because I think that there are a handful of questions that we haven't gotten to in the Q&A, so let's take a look at those right now.
Yeah, you actually maybe just sort of touched on one, so maybe we'll start with this question from Analia, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Analia says, well, I'm going to ask a rude question, but I disagree with that framing. I think it's a great question. They ask, can you talk about the benefits of this specific master's degree in comparison to other lower cost positive psychology certifications? I understand we get taught by Dr. Solomon, which is wonderful. What does being a Mapster post-graduation entail?
Yeah, great
So
question. Thank you, Analia. Not a rude question. I think it's actually a very healthy question. I'm happy to speak about it from my perspective. I also am an alum of the program, and I'll invite my colleagues to also provide some commentary here as well. So I did just mention a little bit about the Alumni Association. I think that graduate study in positive psychology is an interdisciplinary study around applying the science of human flourishing in a domain or field in which you are already expert in or have some ties to or some network and some influence in. So it's about developing ethical scholarly practitioners. There are other certificates and tools that are out there that I think are very focused on helping people to be lifelong learners or to understand the science a little bit better of positive psychology, perhaps think about how they might be more personally effective or a little bit more professionally effective. But that's a little different than a practitioner lens, right? Where a practitioner is looking at applying the science of positive psychology across a range of individuals within a certain population and determining how they might advance their human flourishing. I'll share with you one of our Mapsters. Jeffrey Boone is the founder of an organization called Shining Light. Often people think that, maybe positive psychology is only for the worried well. Well, Jeff actually works in carceral facilities here in the United States. So he works with individuals who are incarcerated for a range of different offenses, sometimes for life. In teaching them about character strengths and helping them to understand that they are not defined by the last worst thing that they did, but that they have something that they might be able to offer the world. That's a life-changing experience for them, and it also helps to improve and reduce recidivism after they transition from having served their time out into the real world. So that's just one example of a practitioner that requires a degree of expertise that frankly can only be I think you can only get in a master's degree level of study. So I think that that's a real distinguishing factor is the practitioner focus and the rigor that goes along with the MAPP program. I had mentioned more about the alumni before. I will say, right, there's no manual, right? It's not like becoming an accountant where you know exactly what you're going to be doing when you graduate with your degree in accounting, right? And so there's no manual for how to be a practitioner. Most of that comes from the creativity and the innovation and the entrepreneurship of our alumni out in the real world. But it can't happen in a vacuum. And what happens with our alumni association is the collective, right? Where they are supporting one another and helping to advance through either ideation, connection, other ways in order to support everyone else. It really is a case where a rising tide raises all ships. I won't say which master's program, but we've had master's programs that have reached out to us and have said, help us to understand how it is that you have this robust alumni association of people who continue to come back, because it really is such a uniqueness of our program. So that's a little bit from my perspective. Laura, you might have more to add.
Gosh, I would double down on a lot of that, and I just might highlight a few of the alumni resources that are specific to being a post student. While we hope you savor your time as a student, as Leona was saying, because it gives you that deep scholarly application lens. If you were to be an alumni of the MAPP program at the University of Pennsylvania, being a part of our alumni network is thriving. We have mastermind groups that support one another in new project development or creation. There are places where you can work on books and collaborate on that. There are different LinkedIn pages and Facebook pages and networking pages, and ask for tips on research or areas or evaluation. We do professional development work as an alumni network. So there are some webinars that happen on occasion that are led by some alumni and those that are requested to come through. And there's even some ways of connecting as just alumni when you're done. So I won't leave all of it out right now, but there are plenty of ways to engage in the lifelong learning process as a part of the larger community.
Great. Aaron, are there other questions that you have for us?
yes, I'm keeping an eye on the clock, but maybe we can do one more. So actually, let me just maybe address, so Jay Varsh in the comments, I'm gonna put my email in the comments, and if you could just email me, we could take that offline. So another question about your class, Leona. Do we get to pick the institution we work with in the class applying positive psychology to organizations?
Great question. So we happen to be in that phase right now, and I'm keeping an eye on the clock as well. So we welcome about 12 organizations each year that we work with. We've had 35 organizations that have applied this year. And so we parse through that, and we're trying to find ideal matches that match our students' professional interests, right? So that we're balancing them that way. We invite our students to nominate organizations that can come to the table. We also ask our alumni to nominate those, and we have organizations that have worked with us that then nominate other organizations because of the experience that they've had. We ask our students to provide us with their top 4 or 5 preferences in terms of the organizations. And then it's a complicated matching process, right? To ensure that we have teams of students that are going to work effectively together, that are all interested in working on the same project. So yes, there is some choice, right? But it's not a specific choice all the time. Very often, our students get matched with exactly the organization that they had hoped to be matched with. But I think historically, as I look across the data, I think I can say with confidence, we have had every single student that's gotten matched to a top 4 amongst the organizations that they've been interested in. So one of their top 4 priorities, they've gotten a match there. So there is some autonomy that's involved with it, but of course we're in a classroom community, and so there is some flexibility that's afforded too. Okay, I am looking at the clock, and it is 6:31 Eastern time, and we had promised to get you out of here after about an hour. So I am going to bring this session to a close. I'll invite you that if you need to leave, we just want to say thank you and extend our gratitude to you. I recognize that time is perhaps our most precious of commodities, and for you to donate some of your time to us in order to hear about the MAPP program was really a joy for us and an honor for us. If you have questions, we encourage you to reach out to us. So you can reach out to us at mappinfo@sas.upenn.edu for additional questions, or alternatively, dial that phone number, and our inimitable Jaden Guybeson will be there to assist you in order to answer any questions that you might have. So thank you all for your extraordinary attention tonight. And really, the fact that you are here tells me a little bit about who you are, and that you also are interested in improving flourishing in the world and being there as a support to others. So for that, whether you choose to apply to MAPP or not, thank you for the work that you are doing out there. We are grateful for it. All right, friends, we'll say farewell to you. Again, we'll keep the webinar open for a few more moments in case there are some additional questions and you have time to hang around. We can do that for just a few minutes, but we want to give the permission for people to be able to sign off now. Thank you to all of you. It was a delight to have you here.